Salutations, respected viewers. I am George from Ireland, and here I am in Hampton, London. So behind me is the house where David Garrick lived the latter years of his life. And this was considered about 12 miles west of London at the time. Obviously these days it's beside Greater London, and his house, it has a splendid view over a gorgeous stretch of the River Thames. You can see how placid it is today as that boat wends its sedate way down Old Father Thames, going inland. There it is. Anyway, so David Garrick was born in Hereford, which is a small town in western England. Well, city really. It's got a cathedral close to the Welsh border. His grandparents had shifted to this realm from France. They were Huguenots, that's to say Protestants. And in 1685, the hard-line Catholics in France, they prevailed upon the Sun King to revoke the Edict of Nantes, and the revocation of that edict resulted in severe discrimination against the Protestant minority, who were up to 20% of the French population, but particularly concentrated in the occidental section of France. And the Garrick family were no exception. They lived in the Bordeaux area. Lots of Protestants living on La Rochelle, which is why there's a Protestant girls' school in Cork in the old days called La Rochelle. Anyway, so his family took ship for this island, and they settled in the west. And it's believed that his father might have actually been born in France and come as an infant. It's not quite clear. And in France, the name was actually spelled Garrick, as in Garrigeu, with an optional S on the end. So it may have been very distantly related to the mother of Thomas Garrick Masaryk, the Czechoslovak president. Anyway, so Garrick grew up in this country, absolutely fluent in English, and they were middle class. And he attended Lichfield Cathedral School, the same school that Dr. Johnson had been at some years earlier. Dr. Johnson about 12 years older than him. Then he was actually later taught by Samuel Johnson. So he set up a wine business, but that did not prosper, and he'd failed in trade. He gravitated towards London, getting here in about 1740. Drama's obviously thriving long before radio or other forms of entertainment. Not a lot of the population wasn't literate. The country was getting a bit more prosperous, although that's just when the War of Austrian Succession began, so hit trade a little bit. So he was an actor most admired for playing Richard III. He was superb at playing villains. He was a gifted tragedian as well as a comic actor, and he penned numerous plays himself, although he's widely not regarded as being an outstanding playwright, and they're almost never performed these days. The Irish Widow, The Bon Ton, for example, or Manners Above Stairs. The Bon Ton is a comedy about the Whigs, about the Duchess of Devonshire's set, and the Bon Ton is their manners, Devonshire House drawl, their special pronunciation. Devonshire House, which stood on Piccadilly in London until the 1920s when it was pulled down. So her social circle and their contrived manner of speech, their other affectations, their fashions and so on. So he wasn't a very political writer. He must have had the right to vote, because he became very wealthy, as you can see, to buy this house here in this very desirable borough in Middlesex, and was this county, which has since simply been amalgamated into Greater London. He's one of 7 children, and his brother George, who was very close to him, came and acted more or less as his secretary. In fact, George expired only 2 days after him, and it may have been partly psychosomatic, that. So he was highly regarded by royalty as well as by the upper reaches of the aristocracy, and anyone came to see him act. And he travelled around the United Kingdom, was maybe the first celebrity actor, also coming to Ireland. We weren't part of the UK at the time, performing in Dublin and elsewhere. And so when he died, he was given a splendid send-off, a funeral with great pomp, attended by tens of thousands of people. So he really was a household name. And he did away with this sententious, stilted style of acting. It was stylized declamation, and he said, well, let's perform in a way which is more true to life. It shouldn't be too stagey. It was just overacted. It was melodramatic. It was gross. So speak in a more realistic way. People can identify with a bit of British understatement. Willing to pause and not to speak as though it's poetry all the time, to use his full range of facial expressions and vocal expressions. There remain many very detailed accounts of how fantastically he delivered his lines and could have a theatre of 1,000 people stock still, waiting on his next syllable. Anyway, he acted almost until the very end, but he took a very close interest in all the particulars of theatre: set design, special effects, music, costumes, and so forth. So it was very hands-on, an actor, director, occasionally manager, less effective as that, and as I say, not renowned as a playwright as such. So he helped to found Drury Lane Theatre, which still exists, and in its heyday was perhaps the most famous theatre in Europe. So people came from far and wide, even French visitors who couldn't understand English. Virtually none of them understood English in those days, but they could still grasp what he was saying, almost those performing in dumb show, which he wasn't. So he died a very affluent man, greatly missed by his many friends. There have been a number of biographies of him. Then the Garrick Theatre was founded and named in his honour. There's the Garrick Club for actors and such types in Soho. That's the theatrical area of London, the West End. So that's enough about David Garrick. Sadly, his house is not open to the public, but anyway, so please book lessons with me online about history, English literature, English as a foreign language, geography, religious studies, politics, law, French, and follow me on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. I greatly value the donation somebody made on Patreon. If you wish to be mentioned by name on air for having donated, then just say so. Otherwise, I assume people are so self-effacing they don't wish me to name them. So thank you very much. Make sure you subscribe. I can't repeat that often enough. Toodaloo.